Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indo Sport podcast. Will Slattery back in the hot seat once again because we just didn't get Joe Malloy's return to play timelines right. Unfortunately, he's had to take another day off to recuperate. Hoping to have him back fit and firing next week, but for now, we'll press on once again. We're going to talk rugby today. It's Champions Cup weekend. I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Ian Madigan. Ian, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Delighted to be in. Looking forward to the last 16 round, and then leading very quickly into the quarterfinals. So yeah, trying to switch from Six Nations, brief séjour into the URC, and now ready for the Champions Cup.
Well, when you make an in-studio appearance, it's always a sign that things are heating up. Like, you like to kind of drop in now and again for knockout rugby for Six Nations, so we appreciate you coming in today.
Delighted to be in, thank you.
Before we kick off, a reminder that rugby on Indo Sport is sponsored by Energia. Energia sponsors rugby in Ireland at all levels, at grassroots with the Energia AIL, and as official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams. To learn more about Energia's rugby partnerships and find out about their exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. As I mentioned, Champions Cup last 16 this weekend. Obviously, only one Irish team involved, Leinster on Sunday evening against Edinburgh. The other three provinces all in the Challenge Cup. And I thought just by way of reintroducing people to the Champions Cup and to European rugby, we could go through the fixtures, and I might just throw kind of a few things at you for each one, and we'll see where we get on. Because obviously, with the Irish interest a little diluted this year in the main competition, there's some other storylines I think that are worth hitting on. So we have Northampton Castle on Friday night, Good Friday, 8 p.m. They played in the quarterfinals last year. Northampton were pretty straightforward winners, and on paper it looks like that could be the way again. But I wanted to ask you about Henry Pollock. A lot of people will have seen Eddie Hearn signing him into his Matchroom talent agency, talking a big game about turning Henry Pollock into the biggest superstar in rugby, and he wants him on Graham Norton, he wants him on Jonathan Ross, he wants this media blitz, and everyone will know Henry Pollock who's listening to this. Broke onto the scene last year, makes his England debut in the Six Nations, and has this breakout performance against Leinster in the Champions Cup semi-final where he's kind of all action and definitely one of the big difference makers on the day. Goes on the Lions tour, more of a learning experience, never really kind of contended for the test places, and then this year obviously been used mostly as an England impact sub. He started against Ireland in the Six Nations. That was his first Six Nations start. Just want to get your opinion on how good you think he actually is, what kind of player you think he is. Obviously a lot of hype around him generally, and this Eddie Hearn news has made it even more. What's your kind of assessment of him as a player?
Well, I think first off, it's great for the game having superstars like him. It helps grow the game. Whether you like him or you don't, you're going to discuss him, and that's what rugby needs. I think Marcus Smith was potentially that guy even 2 years ago, and joined a similar agency. Hasn't quite lived up to the expectations. I think for Pollock, first off, he's got to find a position because he's played kind of across the back row, as you mentioned, being used as an impact sub. For me, I think he's an out-and-out seven. He's a very good poacher of the ball. What he offers in a back line, he's like an additional centre because he's very good handling. He's really elusive. At times, I think he tries to do too much. And you look at the game against Ireland in the Six Nations, we did a great job of just getting him on the ground quickly. He's a good offloading game, but he doesn't want to be on the ground. That's kind of the hard work that you got to do. He'd rather keep the ball alive or take guys on one-on-one. The style of play that Northampton play really suits him because he's freedom. He's not tied down to a set structure, and I think at times in England he can struggle to find his position because he likes to just get his hands on the ball. And when you're playing in the Northampton team, you can push other guys out of the way. They're happy for him to do that. Whereas
Pops up in the wing a lot as well. There's like kind of chip and chases, very eye-catching. So that's not really, you don't see that at international too much.
No, but you look at the chip and chase he did against Bordeaux and who he was up against when he did that. None other than Penno. That was just a phenomenal piece of skill. The ability to catch the ball and get it onto your foot and delicately get it into the in-goal area, and then the sheer athleticism, the speed that he offers is sensational. And single-handedly against Leinster, like those big moments where he's got license to go off script and pick a line that he thinks this is on now, and it's up to the players around him to then follow him in. Whereas in another team structure, they'd say, no, we don't want you doing that, because if you get tackled, you're most likely going to get turned over because there's not going to be support with you. Whereas in that Northampton system, he has free reign to do as he pleases.
He was sensational in that game.
He was.
Like, he really was. Like, that was the moment. Like, because up to that point, I'd seen him play mid-20s. He'd made that big impact off the bench against Wales in the Six Nations, but he was only 20, I think, still at that stage, which is crazy. And he was probably the dominant personality. I don't recall if he got man of the match, but in my mind's eye, when I think of that game, it is him. And at 20 years of age to be making that such an impact was serious.
Yeah, backed it up with a great celebration, the pulse check, which is...
The French hate this pulse check. Jeez, the Bordeaux lads were absolutely sawing it into him. And even when he went for that game earlier in the season, he was getting so much abuse. It's funny to see how much he's riling up the French. And even in the Stade de France, when Freeman scored that late try, obviously Pollock ended up kind of throwing it away at the end. He was like shushing the crowd, and they were really baying for his blood.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think part of the French, though, will really enjoy it, and he's the pantomime villain, and that's great for rugby. We're all talking about him leading into this, and look, it's great for the game. What I will say about him is he backs it up. Even leading into the weekend, that was a tough game they had against Saracens, and a lot of publicity around the Matchroom, or Matchmaker as he called the post game. Was he going to be able to back it up? And he just strikes me as the kind of guy that, the more cameras that are on him, the more eyeballs that are on him, the more that he can find within himself, which is really impressive.
One question I'd have about, so in the international arena, he's getting all this attention, the Matchroom push, Eddie Hearn, if he's on the chat shows, like, he's a sub. Like, what do the other guys in that squad think of that? Like, what would you think if you were in that changing room? If I'm Tom Curry, if I'm Sam Underhill, Guy Pepper, guys who've been starting ahead of him, I'm like, what's going on here? Like, this guy's getting so much attention. I'm actually starting ahead of him. Like, could that be like a little, I don't know, could that be kind of a little bit of an issue amongst a group?
It can be in a team environment, but at the same time, pave your own way. You got to, if these opportunities are presenting to yourself, and you've got the right management team around you to get you on the likes of Graham Norton, why not? And he's got the personality to back it up. He'll relish being on a show like that and entertaining people, and that's what he craves. I think I've seen some footage of him on social media, and he just looks like he's really enjoying it. And you compare that to, some other younger players coming through that, they should be living out their dreams, but it doesn't look like it's that enjoyable for them. He is loving every moment of it, and that's great to see.
Yeah, no, fair point. It's just interesting when someone gets a lot of attention who isn't like a star. Like, we're used to the captain, the star player on the team, getting the endorsement deals and maybe being on the chat shows, but when it's someone not of that ilk, I'm curious to see how it plays out and see how that develops, because Eddie Hearn is saying it's going to be in the short term, so I'm thinking, like, they're playing Champions Cup this weekend, maybe Champions Cup next weekend, they're in contention for the Premiership. Is he going to be like going on these shows? That doesn't strike me as the best preparation, so we'll have to wait and see on that.
What I will say on that, like, obviously Dupont is the superstar in France. Like, Toulouse will move their schedule around to ensure that he can do the Louis Vuitton shoots and whatnot, and part of that is that they knew it was going to be hard to keep him, and by allowing him to do the commercial stuff off the field, they're keeping him happy, and I think the players that he's playing with are just happy that he's still in their team, and they'll support him with it as well.
Just one word on Northampton and their attack. Sam Vesti gets a lot of publicity as their attack coach, and when you watch them in full flight, they're a joy to watch, and they look so well drilled, and their shape looks so well defined. Like, what does anything jump out to you about what he's doing with them and what they do in attack?
I really like how he goes about his business. I've seen some of the Northampton clips from training and the different drills that he has them doing. Very kind of instinctive coach, gives the players a lot of freedom. But to do that, your kind of foundations of the game need to be really strong. Good scrum, good line out, win the aerial contest, resource the breakdown really well. And then once you have that, you can layer on what he brings, which is, deception at the line. The variation in that Northampton game, the Finn Smith there who plays square to the line, attracts a lot of defenders, is very good at passing under pressure to then put players into space. But it's the deception and how they integrate the backs and the forwards on open play that is really their point of difference. And you back that up with good athletes like Freeman. All these guys need is a soft shoulder, and that's his kind of philosophy, is can we get the likes of Freeman a soft shoulder 5-10 times in a game, allow him to get his arms free, and that's when it comes to light for Saints.
And there's two guys they have this year that they didn't have last year that I really like. Eduardo Todero, the winger from Italy, who I think went to boarding school in the UK, and he's been a revelation. And then JJ Vandermesh, the exact opposite, this big South African unit of people haven't seen him. I think he's one of the heaviest players in the Premiership, if not the heaviest, and he's like just trucking over guys, and it adds a point of difference, I suppose.
Yeah, he can dance as well. 150 kilos, and that's what does that give you? You know, you're not necessarily trundling forward. You can give it to him in the middle of the field. He has the ability to keep his feet, and then once he decides, right, it's time to go to deck, all he's to do is lean forward and he'll find the ground. Whereas you compare that to even Munster at the weekend against the Bulls, they just were out-muscled at times, and even in the first half when they were, they had the ascendancy in the game and the Bulls weren't playing well, they were getting turned over too much. And part of that is when you're going into contact, and this is certainly something that I found when I was playing in the centre at 90 kilos, you're always conscious of getting held up. So it's a fine line between trying to keep your feet driving through contact. You can end up getting held up, turns into a maul, scrum, turnover. But the way the rules of the breakdown have gone now, if you find the ground too quickly, it's easy to poach the ball now. It's much harder for the attacking team, supporting players to get in and clear out at the breakdown. So if you get grassed really quickly, the likelihood of a turnover is really high. And that was what was happening to Munster. Even their back row guys, the likes of Gleeson, they were getting tackled straight to deck. The Bulls players coming in and poaching. Whereas you look at the likes of Van der Mesch and even McCluskey in the Six Nations, it's his ability to keep his feet. And then when he goes, right, I know that the support is nearby, now's the time to get to deck. The ruckers come in, clear out immediately, and it's really fast ball. But you're not giving the opposition any opportunity to get in and poach the ball.
Yeah, interesting. So Northampton cast the first game Friday night. They're big favourites. They would expect them to go through, and they'll be a dangerous team later in the tournament, even the following week in the quarter-final stage.
Yeah, be interesting to see if Cass can back up the big win that they had against Munster in this competition. They're clearly valuing this competition this year, which they hadn't done in previous years.
To be fair, last year they won away to Saracens as well and got into the knockouts because they've been I've been taking the piss out of Cast for years on the left wing just because they always show up. They're good for a home, turning you over at home, and they're good for the cheese board in the press box apparently, according to Keane Tracy as well. But then when it comes to any away game, they don't show much interest. So yeah, to be fair, I'll be interested to see how they pitch up on Friday night. Then we go to Bath Saracens, the first game on Saturday, 3 p.m. And traditionally you see Bath Saracens, you're thinking, oh wow, this is a blockbuster clash. But they played 2 weeks ago and it was 62-15 to Bath, albeit Saracens didn't have every one of their big guns playing, but they had a fairly strong team out, and I think maybe it just shows where Saracens are at now. But I want to talk to you about Bath, who look really, really strong. They look like they built year on year under Johan van Graan. How close are they to the top table, do you think?
I think they're number one contenders out of England, and full credit to the English. They've all seven of their teams have made the last 16, which is a great achievement. They when we were talking there earlier about the foundation of their game, excellent scrum, excellent line out and maul, really good halfbacks that have a brilliant kicking game. They're excellent early. You're going, right, well, you're going to be in a good spot to win a lot of games with that alone. But then you throw into the quality of their backline attack when they get that go forward ball. Finn Russell is in probably the form of his life, I'd say, playing really good rugby. They have a second set of hands, multiple options in the centre, and then a really dangerous back three with kind of that raw speed, in particular with Arundel. They are definitely contenders.
There's so many options. If you look at their back row, they have Sam Underhill, they have Guy Pepper, they have Miles Reid, an underrated player as well. Alfie Barberi, who comes off the bench a lot. And then, as you said, the two halfbacks, and then the back line, in the centre, Redpath, Ajomo, and Lawrence, they can kind of pick with whoever they want there of different combos. And then the back three, Cokanasiga, Arundel, Santi Carreras, who they added to the mix as well. The depth they have, all salary cap compliant, we must say. Apparently, that's been you see, they add Arundel and Carreras to a squad that won the league, and they just look so strong. But Finn Russell, I want to talk to you about specifically. Obviously, as an out half yourself, and you would have played against him, I'm sure, a good bit during your career. I feel like it's been a great marriage for him and Johan van Graan, who I would have seen as maybe a more conservative coach. I feel like Russell has maybe sanded off some of his rough edges, and he's still very aggressive, but he doesn't seem to make the same amount of kind of high wire mistakes that he might have made earlier in his career? I don't know. Maybe has he just matured as a player? Do you think the Johan Gran influence helps? What have you made of how he's playing now versus how he would have been playing a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I think the structure that Van Gran has brought into Bath has dovetailed well with Russell's game because large parts of the kicking game are managed by the nine, and then it's just becomes much clearer for Finn what he's got to execute on. He's got a really good underrated kicking game out of hand, and he's one of the best passers under pressure in the game. Himself and Jalibert are probably number one and number two. One thing I'll say about Russell, though, he's never played well against Ireland. Like, we always set up the team, and Dupont, to an extent, hasn't really played well against Ireland. Ireland are very good at bringing together a plan to undo the likes of Russell and Dupont. And the way we do that, we take his time away. And we get defenders high up on his eye line, and really just try and, as opposed to him having 2, 3, 4 options, we're always trying to cut his options down to maybe 1 or 2 options. And then you've got the likes of Ringrose, where he's really hedging that and trying to kind of present one picture and then show a different picture very late. And I don't think Russell enjoys playing against that kind of defence. So that's where it will be interesting as we progress deeper into this competition, how teams will look to maybe set him up a little bit, force him into the pocket, force defenders up high on the outside and shut down his options. But Bath are definitely live contenders. Even their scrum alone, like, Thomas the Tank in there. Like,
Will Stewart injured,
Will
though,
Stewart,
which is big.
yeah, Will Stewart's a loss for them.
Having the two lads there, you're talking about an 80-minute slog as a loose head prop. Like, that's maybe releases the pressure valve slightly. But Dutoy has been one of the standout players in the Premiership since he joined them.
No, even at the weekend, like, Sale are one of the sneaky toughest away games you can have in the Premiership and in Europe. And they went ahead against Bath at the weekend, and then I think it was on about 35 minutes. They brought on, I think it was Obano and Dutoy, and it just shored up the game for them. And then suddenly you start winning scrum penalties. You can flip the field once you're getting that. So, you've a scrum on your own 22. You win a penalty, you're up to the 10-metre line. You go to your maul, and then Bath, when they get like 35, 40 metres out from their line, their power game is so good. They'll take you through 10, 15, 20 phases. Before you know it, you're in under the post going, what have we done wrong there? Not a whole lot. You've just been completely out-muscled.
Yeah, they can beat you a number of different ways, which is impressive. And if you look at their trajectory the last couple of years, the 21-22 season, Stuart Hooper was in charge. They finished last in the Premiership. The following season, 22-23, Van Gran comes in for his first year. I think they finished like maybe 9th or 8th. The 2024 season, they get to the final. Obano gets a red card. They lose to Northampton. But no shame, it was Russell's first season. They get straight to a final. And then last year, they win the Premiership. They win the Challenge Cup. And now this year, they look primed to really have a crack at Europe. It's been a remarkable kind of building over the last couple of years. And what do you make of Saracens these days? Like, the team they're playing, like Owen Farrell obviously came back in the summer to a lot of fanfare. Mark McCall's leaving at the end of the season, the end of an era. Been there 15, 16 years as the head coach. And you look at their team sheet, they beat Toulouse in the pool stages. Like, there are still good names in that team sheet, but they're no one's talking about them as a contender, and rightly so. Like, I don't think they have any chance of winning the Champions Cup. I expect them to probably get fairly heavily beaten by Bath. I don't know what your assessment is of where they are now.
Yeah, I think they're an aging team. But with that, what I'd say with them is they still have a big day in them. And I wouldn't write them off at the weekend. But if they were to win this weekend, I wouldn't be confident that they'd be able to back it up in the quarterfinal. And that's what you get. And in a way, it's similar to La Rochelle. La Rochelle have struggled with that consistency. And part of that is when you've got, a lot of your squad north of 30 or with a lot of miles on the clock, they've just struggled. And the opposition are coming up against these guys, and they kind of know what's coming. And they've largely figured them out. They've had a tough year in the Premiership this year, so they'll be really clinging on to trying to go on a run in the Champions Cup. But I'd be confident that Bath will win that game. But I think it will be more of an arm wrestle than people think.
I don't know if you've seen much of Owen Farrell. As I mentioned, he went to the Leinster. Obviously, he was very controversial when Farrell called him up when he was going back to Saracens. He didn't have a good time at Racing, obviously, 1 year, and he comes back. He's 34 now, I think. He'll be 35 later in the year. Like, what kind of rugby is he playing? What kind of player is he at 34 now, do you think?
He's still a very good rugby player. I think Saracens just don't have the firepower around him. And, it's not like he's a a game breaker now, where he's going to be like Jalibert, making breaks, chipping and chasing his own balls, and the ability to kind of win it single handedly or change a game. He's more like George Ford, and the older you get as an out half, you've got to be able to kind of plot your way around. He does that really well. His kicking game is excellent. Really, really good defender, and very good strategist in the sense that he's very comfortable. Like, I remember covering the game in the Challenge Cup last year when Racing had a red card against Connacht, and they were 21-0 down, and when Farrell came on, he just changed the game.
He hit a drop goal, did he?
Hit a drop goal, but he just plotted his way around it. It was just moment on moment, and they just compounded. But look, Sarries have. I was very disappointed with Sarries last year. Remember, they sent their second string team to Toulon and were in the game for a large part. And I'd say on 60 minutes, if they would have said, geez, maybe we should have sent our first team here, we would have had a chance. They've got great history in the competition. And look, I hope for them that they can do themselves justice at the weekend and really stick it to Bath.
Yeah, and if Bath win and Northampton win, they play in the quarterfinals, which would be an absolute blockbuster. The two best teams in England this year. Toulon Stormers also at 3 o'clock. And the only thing I wanted to mention about this game, really, Toulon probably the favourites, to be fair, at home. It could be one of the closer games this weekend. I want to talk to you about Sasha Feinberg and Gamazulu, who we're hoping is playing. We obviously don't know yet. The Stormers teams will be picked, but hopefully. I was looking at their training video they put out yesterday, and I saw he was holding a tackle bag. I'm hoping that's a good sign, and not that he's just like holding a bag for the starters. Because I wanted to talk to you about the compare and contrast, like Andre Pollard last weekend, who kicks his 6 from 6 and just plots the Bulls around the pitch, gets them to the victory. It just shows how valuable Pollard is to a setup. But Feinberg and Gamazulu is obviously the new thing. Anyone who's seen him play knows how much talent he has. I know you've talked a lot about him as well and how much you like him. It's interesting that they have these two guys. Like, how much do you like Feinberg and Gamazulu, and how valuable do you think Pollard's attributes are to still actually winning, say, a World Cup for South Africa versus what Gamazulu brings, which is a lot of playmaking, but maybe not that level of control?
Yeah, I think the difference between the two is, like, Pollard's low bar, and when I say that, I mean a bad game for him. He's probably down at like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. There's not a whole lot that can go wrong. His goal kicking's metronomic, kicking out of hand, really good passer of the ball, rock solid defender. He wouldn't have the agility or top end speed that Ngomazulu would have, but that consistency. And look, when you're in a World Cup semi-final or final, maybe you don't need the X factor to win, and that's where he could still be the guy. What's with Sasha, like, he's got all the tricks. I think part of the issue with him in the second half of the season is he's trying to show them all the time. He's always trying to do something, and he's probably falling into the trap of playing each phase on its own as well. He's not necessarily being patient enough to plot his way through a game, to set up the opposition the way he wants them, to then capitalize on that. The other area of his game that I've seen, a couple of times, there is indiscipline in there, and he can get into the red. Like, there was a no arms clear out, leading with the forearm into a tackle. There's been a couple of them, and even in one of the league games earlier in the season against the Scarlets, like, he ended up kind of losing his temper and turned the ref against the Stormers. That would be a red flag for Razzie. Like, if that happened in a World Cup quarterfinal, semi-final, you could end up losing a game because of it, especially if you ended up getting sin-binned or sent off at the wrong time. So yeah, look, I think for him it can be hard when you're young and you want to showcase what you can do, but in the Champions Cup away from home in Toulon, sometimes it's about not making mistakes. And just being patient and waiting for that good opportunity to pull the trigger and go for the break at a certain time when you feel like your forwards have got on top, you're on front foot ball, maybe you've got a penalty advantage and you've got the freedom to really go for it, versus your team maybe being in a real arm wrestle, you're 5 points down, you're in your own half, and you decide to go for a chip and chase when it's not really on. Opposition regain possession, suddenly it's a 2-score game with 20 minutes to go. That's what you got to he's got to avoid, and kind of, as you said with Finn Russell, like, cut out those big errors. As an out half, quite often it's not about good, exceptional, good, awful, average, good, exceptional. It's about just being rock steady. So you're the guy in the control room that everyone's looking to with confidence, going, this guy's in control. He's going to make the right decisions, 90% of the time.
And one name, give me one name. You're picking the South African team in the morning for a World Cup knockout game. Who's your 10?
It's probably still Pollard, but I think as we get closer to the World Cup, and
especially Tony Brown's influence, like who do you think Brown wants to have on the pitch? I think it's probably Sasha Weinberg and Gamazulu, because the way Brown likes to play the game, potentially,
he definitely gives you a lot more from an attacking perspective. But when you're in World Cup knockouts, it's about winning a game, and that's where sometimes you can just go with the steady hand at fly half. I think the more he plays, the more he'll learn. 2 years out from the World Cup, I'd say he's probably going to be the guy when we get to it.
Yeah, I do too. But it's just interesting that I still have that option of Andre Pollard, and Manny Leblanc may be in the mix as well, albeit he's kind of like the worst of both worlds in the sense that he's not a good goal kicker and he's very loose as well. Whereas at least with Pollard, you have the other one. So Toulouse, I want to talk about these two games kind of in tandem. Toulouse Bristol Saturday 5:30 p.m. You think you're doing that with Premier, and then Bordeaux Leicester Sunday 3 p.m. as well. Like obviously, Toulouse and Bordeaux are two of the big beasts in the tournament, probably the two tournament favourites. I was just interested to get your opinion on, like, when you watch them both separately, like, do they play very similarly? Do they play very differently? Like, in my mind's eye, they both play with a lot of flair. They both have fairly powerful forward packs. Maybe Toulouse slightly more powerful potentially up front, but I'd just be interested to get your perspective on what you see maybe differently between them, or do they play very similarly?
No, there is loads of similarities. You touched on it there. Toulouse have a bit more power up front, and with that they're more comfortable holding possession higher into the phase count because they can just arm wrestle you around the breakdown, and then that tees into what Dupont offers you, his ability to probe in around the breakdown. And the best time to do that is when your forwards are trundling forward. You've got the defence are retreating, they're not getting set, and then you've Dupont comes in, skips outside the first two defenders, turns in the third defender, rips it out to Entmac, and then they're away into space. Bordeaux don't necessarily do that, and they don't go anything as high into the phase count. What I'd say is with Bordeaux in particular, they are very comfortable with the opposition having the ball, especially around the halfway line and even around their own 10-metre line, and allow the opposition to go 8, 10, 12, 15 phases into the phase count, tire themselves out, and Bordeaux will largely fill the field. They don't contest. They're very selective on what rucks they contest, but when they do go in, they'll either go in with the heavy artillery on a counter ruck or poach the ball. And when they do poach it and the opposition are on their 10th, 11th, 12th phase, that's when Bordeaux are lethal. And full credit to Noel McNamara. He has them so well drilled on those opportunities. Their ability to move the ball to width quickly, get it to Bielbarri and Penno, and even Burros, who's another guy with real top end speed.
Portier is brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Mofana is good. Even that, is it Salesi Rava? Oh, I can't remember his name. The kind of the
Riassi, yeah.
He's a flyer as well. He's brilliant.
No, he is, and I think it was Noel McNamara said, if you've got two Ferraris, like, don't leave them in the garage, drive them. And it's just as simple as that. You get your wingers the ball as much as possible, and Bordeaux do that really, really well.
Sorry, can I ask you about Damien Penaud then? Obviously he gets dropped in the Six Nations squad, like for Adesogbe, was a huge surprise at the time. France obviously win the tournament by the skin of their teeth in the end. Like, where's Damien Penaud at? Like, why was he dropped? Like, what are the weaknesses in his game? Like, just talk about his work rate, maybe his defence. Obviously, he scores a hatful of tries, so it's not what he does with the ball. But what was your perspective on that?
Yeah, look, he has a couple of big errors in his game. I think that wouldn't necessarily have been it. Maybe his attitude, at times he can drift in and drift out of games. Now, just to caveat that, I think he's one of the best wingers in the world. The reason why I think Adesogbe got picked ahead of him, he's better early. Like, despite Penaud being a big, strong guy, he doesn't win his fair share of aerial duels. And there's a kind of looseness to how he approaches that. He slaps the ball back a lot of the time. He doesn't win them cleanly. I don't know what's gone on in the French cap there. For him to not be in the squad simply didn't make sense. So something's probably happened. But look, when he plays for Bordeaux, he's sensational, and himself and Bielbarri are two of the foreign wingers in this year's Champions Cup.
And much like the Battle of the English potentially next weekend, if Toulouse beat Bristol at home and Bordeaux beat Leicester at home, which they'd be strongly favoured to do so, we have a Bordeaux-Toulouse clash in the quarterfinals. Like, are they the two best teams for you at the moment?
Yeah, they would be. Yeah. I think, look, whoever wins that game, I'd imagine will make the final.
We're really looking ahead now, but
no, I know, but I think, looking at it through a Leinster lens, I'm thinking, right, if to beat Toulouse or Bordeaux or even Bath, they're going to have to find another gear in their attack. It's been too blunt force. Now, I did see some green shoots at the weekend against the Scarlets. Leinster's definitely starting to move the ball to width much more, moving the point of contact much more, whereas they were just bludgeoning teams. Like, even when they went on, I think it was that 11-game win streak, there wasn't that many convincing wins. Like, you think of Welford Road, you think of the game against Bayonne, the game against La Rochelle. Now, even the win against Thomond, like Munster had them on the rack towards the end. It wasn't like you think back to this time last year when they were putting up 40, 50, 60 points to nil against oppositions, when the defence was just so watertight, but the attack was fizzing. They were moving the ball into those wide channels really well. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I don't think Edinburgh are going to give them a good test at the weekend. I've been disappointed with Edinburgh. They were slightly better at the weekend, but I think, like, to compete against Leinster, you have to match them up front to have any chance. And I just think that the Leinster pack are going to get on top of that Edinburgh pack, and we should see the backline really come to life this weekend.
Yeah, well, we might as well stay on Leinster then. We'll skip ahead to Leinster Edinburgh, as you said, 5:30 p.m. Easter Sunday. You'll be doing the commentary on that. Yeah, as you said, Edinburgh lost 6 out of 7. Duhan van der Merwe's not travelling either. He's injured, so one of their weapons out wide. They will have, like, kind of Pierre Schoeman, Darcy Graham, who I wonder if Darcy Graham's doing media this week, if he has anything to say about Leinster. Like, you mentioned the Scarlets game there. I must say, I was very surprised watching the first, say, 25 minutes how kind of rusty or kind of just poor Leinster were, because there was 9 guys who started against Scotland who were starting for Leinster that night, who against Scotland were like lording it over Scotland and playing like the best rugby they had in quite some time. So I was very intrigued to see what going back into the Leinster environment, would they be able to keep that level? And maybe they hit it later in the game potentially, but I think eventually the extra quality and power and talent just wore through. What did you make of that opening period?
Yeah, well, I think first off, like, full credit to the Scarlets, and like they're not competing this week, so they were able to really gear themselves up for this game.
Theo Cullen said that as well.
Yeah,
is that a real? That seems like a bit of a cop out. Like, Leinster playing the Scarlets, should they ever really be in that sticky a position with the squad they have?
No, I'm more talking about Scarlets from a Scarlets lens. Yeah. As in, they're they said themselves they were treating this like a test match, and I was first off really impressed with how they defended. Like, they hit seriously hard in the tackle. Their ability to get bodies in front of the Leinster carriers and seriously drive through them. And I think Leinster were probably a little bit surprised at that, like, just going, these guys are really up for this, and it just made them hard to break down. The aerial contest, the Scarlets won the aerial contest. I think it was something like, of the first 10, Leinster only came up with the ball twice. Scarlets came up with it, I think, 7 or 8 times. So that, Leinster struggled to get access into the game. They had a good opportunity early doors to score, which the Scarlets held them out. And then anytime the Scarlets got up into the Leinster kind of 30 out from their line, they just kept the ball and really frustrated Leinster. Went high in the phase count, were really organised, and just kind of frustrated Leinster. You look at from 35 minutes to 50 minutes, that 15-minute spell from Leinster was really impressive. Really turned it on. Tommy O'Brien scored his 2 tries. Can't remember who scored the try before half time.
Ringrose got a try before. Ringrose got one, but that was the first try of the game, I think. Oh, JJ Kenny scored.
JJ Kenny, yeah. Who looked really good again. What a find he's been for Leinster. So like, it can be hard for Leinster to get their cohesion right when you've got players coming back from the Six Nations. You've got the body of the squad there. And then you're chopping and changing off the back of a really disappointing defeat or performance against Glasgow the week before. So, the coach is trying to get a reaction out of the players, but you're delivering that message to players who weren't playing the week before. So it's not going to hit the same way. The key guys, like, obviously, like Sheehan, McCarthy, Doris. Like I was impressed with them at the weekend. Now, McCarthy, very unlike him, got stripped twice in kind of one passage play.
Twice in 1 minute.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on here? That's when I saw that. Honestly, that like was like, I'm like, what's going on here? They're not just as switched on as they were. Even Doris's discipline early doors, like he was really chasing after everything. He was going off his feet around the line. He's probably lucky he didn't get binned. I was just like, God, I'm surprised that it's so quickly. They've lost that little bit of extra 10% they seem to have 2 weeks earlier in the same stadium.
Yeah, and like if Leinster are to win the Champions Cup this year, like one thing they're going to have to do better is manage the referee better. Like you can't lose the referee 5-10 minutes into the game. And the way Doris was speaking to
Holly Davidson, wasn't it?
No, it was Amy.
Yes, the South African. Yeah.
Look, and she communicates with the players really well, really clearly. When she makes her decision, that's it. And I think, look, 5-10 minutes into a game, that's not the one to be arguing it out with a referee when you're five meters out from your line. Just let it go, win the next moment. And it is important in the Champions Cup that you've got to bide your time. Yes, sir, 3 bags full. But then when you do come to the referee, it needs to be impactful. And when you do that, they will listen to you, but they won't listen to you every single time there's a break in play. You're coming and looking for something. So that's certainly something that I think that Leinster as a team can improve on.
Yeah, they haven't been, even going back, like, you know, the Jakob Piper final and the Viva, like they didn't get on the right side of him that day. Matthew Carley in Spurs Stadium, you didn't get on the right side of him that day, and they've had previous with Matthew Carley in La Rochelle that time when he wouldn't speak to James Ryan, and yeah, it's been an issue.
No, it has. Yeah. But saying that, you also look at what they did in the centre. You know, they brought in Osborne into 12. Really impressed with him at the weekend. And I think that's his best position moving forward. He's a brilliant fullback. But in this Leinster team with Hugo coming back in, I'd imagine Hugo will probably start. He actually played very well against Glasgow, which is seriously impressive. First game of the season back. I think probably part of his return to play protocol was to have last week off, but I'd imagine he'll play if everything's right with him. This week, Osborne in the centre, probably with providing Gary's okay. I know he picked up a couple of knocks at the weekend, but that is a good, strong centre partnership, and I think he can really offer Leinster a lot there. Second set of hands, big body, he's good defensively. So yeah, that was a very positive step. Moving him into 12.
He did look good when Harry Byrne fizzed that pass and he went through the gap in the build up to O'Brien's try in the second half, and O'Brien looked super sharp, like chasing down the Scarlet's ball carry at the end and getting the turnover was just a brilliant bit of play. I asked you to pick a Springboks team earlier. Who's picking, if you're picking the Leinster team this weekend, who's the
10? I didn't think Harry had his best game at the weekend, but he's set a high bar for himself this season. He's been really good. I think, and even like goal kicking at the weekend wasn't his best. I think he had 3, maybe 4 or 5 from the touchline. But even those ones, you know, if you 4 from the touchline for a kicker of his quality, you'd be backing yourself to get 2 of the 4 anyway. I think he only maybe got 1 from 4, maybe 2 from 5 was the final count. But he was good defensively, got the ball moving in the back line well. I think he's the guy that Leinster go with, and it would be the guy that I go with this week. Prendergast came on and was playing fullback, and similar in a way to what we were talking about Ngama, he just looked like a guy who was forcing it. He was trying to make something happen on all the possessions that he had. There was one in particular where he makes a break and he goes to grubber it through. Leinster got themselves in a great position there. They're 20 metres out from the Scarlets line. Just take that into contact, get possession back. Leinster are going to score 2 or 3 phases later. Got caught out defensively on another occasion where it is tricky when you're at fullback. Do you take second last or do you take last? But for me, I thought it was reasonably clear that he should have gone to last. He just got caught in 2 minds. So yeah, look, I think that they'll go with Harry. I think the question there is then, like, what are you looking to do on the bench? Because Frawley probably offers you a bit more. He covers 10, 12, fullback. What do they do with Robbie Henshaw if Osborne starting? Where do you fit Rico Ioane in, or at all? So they're probably the real conundrum that Leo and the team are going to have.
Just on Prendergast, he obviously started it at half against Glasgow in that performance you mentioned a minute ago. What did you make of that? Was his first game in 5 weeks. Like, it had been 35 days since that Italy game, and obviously he didn't feature he wasn't even on the bench for the subsequent 3 matches. So it's a long time to be kind of thinking about your game, kind of processing, kind of being dropped out of the Ireland 23, having been the starter at the start of the tournament. So I was fascinated to see how he would respond in that Glasgow game, and obviously it was a very tough day generally for the team. And then you mentioned he played fullback last week. So what did you make of that time we got to see of him at 10 and how he would have bounced back?
Yeah, there was a couple of interesting parts of it. Even like Blendell came out the following week and said, maybe teams are figuring out how to play against Sam as well. And that's what's going to happen. When you burst onto the scene, teams don't really know what's coming. So you can, have a year where you can have free reign as such. Glasgow set themselves up it was very intelligent. They didn't put many players into the breakdown, but what they did with the tacklers were they ensured that they held the Leinster ball carriers up, which created really slow ball. But it also meant that Leinster were always attacking against a lot of Glasgow bodies. They filled the field really well. It's a small pitch in Scottstown, and they also only really had one and a half, two players in the backfield. So a lot of the time Prendergast was attacking against 11, 12 frontline Glasgow defenders. There was very, very little space for him, and look, there was a little bit of frustration there at times, and he also plotted Leinster forward very well, especially in the second half. From kind of 40 minutes to 60 minutes, Leinster had real dominance, and they should have scored. And had they have scored, it's back to a one-score game. Could they have kicked on and won the game? Possibly. They didn't, and then Glasgow had their own purple patch, and the score ends up something along the lines of 40-20 or in around that. Defensively, he made some better tackles that day, and even just looking at him technically, he looks like he's doing a lot of work in training. Even the position of his hands, his ability to drop his height, it's definitely improving from where it was, in some of the Six Nations games or earlier games for Leinster. That is always going to be a work on for him. He's 6'4", playing in the number 10 position. You have big bodies coming at you. Your tackle selection is so important. But he's definitely making steps in the right direction in that area for me.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if he gets an opportunity over the next 2 weeks. As you said, it doesn't look like he might start, and the bench options are fairly plentiful. Leinster could have a starting team this weekend of Porter, Sheehan, Furlong, McCarthy, potentially Baird back in the second row if he's fit, Conan, Van der Fleer, Doris, Gibson Park, Harry Byrne, Osborne, Ringrose, and a back three of Keenan, Tommy O'Brien, and maybe Joshua Kenny. That is still that's as formidable a starting team as you will see in the competition. It's just depending how they play.
No, it is, and it's I think we said it with the Irish backline against England. It was the fastest ever Irish backline. You're now looking at that Leinster backline with Joshua on one wing, Tommy on the other, Osborne in the centre, going, geez, we've got some real speed here. And yeah, look, I think it's interesting, and you could sense with Leo Cullen after the game at the weekend, they're trying to build this excitement into the season. They've got themselves into a fantastic position. You have a home last 16, home quarter, you're on the good side of the draw. They're still in a very good position in the URC. Like, they have a good run in the final 4 games that they have. They're all winnable. They should finish in the top 2 there. Like, the double is on, but it doesn't feel like that just yet. But what I will say is that can all change very, very quickly. Like a comprehensive win this weekend, back it up with a comprehensive win next weekend. Suddenly everyone's talking about Leinster being real title contenders again.
What it feels like at the moment, and this is only what it feels like, in my kind of my gut or in my mind, is that the first properly good team they'll play will beat them and knock them out. That's how they're playing at the moment. But that's not to say over the next 2 rounds they can build that up, as you say. But if they were playing a top 4 team this Saturday or Sunday, I think they'd be knocked out.
Well, look, I think you're right to have that view, because history would tell you you've been right in that sense over the last 4 or 5 seasons. But saying that, Leinster have been the most consistent side in Europe over the last 10 years. They're always top table, making semi-finals. And part of it as well, like we've seen the financial difficulty that Munster have found themselves in. If you look at the number of home knockout games that Munster have had over even the last 5 years, you could count them on one hand, both in the Champions Cup and the URC. You compare that to Leinster over the last 5 years. You're looking at probably 4 or 5 of those games every single year. The guts of 20 home games over the last
time
5
they
years.
haven't had like a home knockout game that they didn't that in terms of not earning it was 2017 away to Claremont. They played La Rochelle away in 2021 during COVID, but that was drawn out of a hat. Like, so, you know, the Leinster had won, you know, it was because it was a COVID year. Like, they didn't. So every year they've earned home games. It's 2017, almost 10 years since the last time they didn't actually win their way into a home game, which is like that's so much money, extra money every year.
No, it is, and you know, sorry, you listen to, you know, the noise out of Munster. There was an interview that the CEO did last year, and they said if we don't make, or if we didn't make Champions Cup, you're looking at probably $1 million off the bottom line. And they're battling for top 8 this year. Now I still think they'll win 2 of their last 4 home games and make the top 8. But on the flip side, you look at Leinster, where, you know, they win this weekend, they win the following weekend, and they make top 2 of the URC, and you're getting an extra 4 or 5 home games where season tickets aren't included. Those games are worth 200, 300, 400 grand each, depending where they're played against, or where they're played, and how well they fill the stadiums. That Munster not making the Champions Cup, $1 million in the red. Leinster getting those 4 or 5 extra home games, $1 million in the green. Like, it's, you then roll that out over 4 or 5 seasons. Like, that's significant, and that's what gives you the luxury of signing the likes of Barrett, Ioane, Snyman, and getting these quality guys. But it's also the ability to hold on to the quality players in the middle of your squad, like how they can hold on to the likes of Deegan, Penny, and keep those guys really happy.
Yeah, it's certainly been a huge part of their success over the last few years, an impressive kind of stacking year on year of home games, albeit this year, if they get to the semi-finals, they will be away from home. And the team who they would be away from home to if they get that far is one I want to ask you about. Glasgow Bulls, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. What is your view of Glasgow? You obviously saw their second string 2 weeks ago, which that was so impressive to me. I said to someone on one of the other shows, like, it reminded me of Leinster a couple of years ago when they would have their second string as well drilled and as cohesive and playing on the same page as the starters. Like, we saw how good the number 2 guys were. What do you make of the number 1 guys when they're all fit and firing? Like, the way they put Saracens to the sword in that last pool game to copper fasten that seeding, I thought was so impressive, because as we mentioned earlier, Saracens had won against Toulouse the week before. They brought a strong team, and Glasgow just absolutely shredded them.
Yeah. No, really impressed with Glasgow. I was over for the game that they played Leinster a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't recognise that many players on that Glasgow team sheet. And I was talking to Ryan Wilson before the game, and he was like, no, these guys go well, and he was going through them one by one. And they played really well. And I think you contrast that to Leinster, and you touched on it there. The Leinster second string team is far weaker than it has been in previous years. There's a big gap between the starting 15 and the second and third guys that come in and replace them. And that's why they've lost, 4 games in the URC. Glasgow are really, really well drilled. What I really like about their attack, and Glasgow have played this way for a long time, like even going back 10, 15 years, their short side attack was always exceptional. And their ability to kind of probe interest defenders 1 and 2, but then have a really nice kind of shape and structure. Everyone's a live option at the line. And quite often you'll see intricate passing down the short side, and we'll get to the winger and suddenly it opens up and they'll make 15, 20 metres and then they're back into their game. But this year, more than ever, and Nigel Carolan, previously of Connacht, largely runs their attack. He's done a cracking job, and it's not just short side attack; it's double sided attack is how they set up. So it's the ability of if you go to width, the ability of those attacking players in those wide channels getting up and reloading, and then when the play comes back maybe to the middle of the field or 20 metres from the touchline, you've got options both sides of the ball. And if a team is doing that consistently throughout a game, as a defender, you just feel like you are always under pressure, and you feel like you're always chasing the opposition as opposed to getting front on opportunities to make big tackles. You feel like the opposition are always running away from you. You can't get purchase in the contact zone, and as a result, Glasgow are getting quick ruck ball, playing on the front foot, and when they get that, they also have a really effective kicking game. They play the corners really well, and they've adapted as well as any other side early. Like, you know, you think of the likes of Kyle Stain, who was probably the form winger in the Six Nations. He is quality guy, both early, but also how he works his way in off the wing. And they are genuine contenders. But look, they're Scottish, so like they might trip up.
You've been so effusive and full of praise.
I will keep doing it until I get the egg on my face. So
yeah. Well, like, look, your England predictions in the Six Nations. Look,
God,
alone, you like. Look, we'll say no more about that. But
you nearly saved me in the end.
No, I agree with you. Glasgow, they're really interesting to watch. Love watching them play. They play the Bulls on Saturday. If they win that, they play the winner of Toulon Stormers in the quarterfinals, which would be a tricky game, no matter who. Obviously, with the South African teams, we never know what teams they might bring over. Hopefully, we see a full Bulls team, and hopefully, we see a full Stormers team in that other game. The last Champions Cup game I want to discuss before we finish off with the other provinces: Quins and Sale, Saturday 8 p.m. Feels like a kind of a battle between two relatively mediocre teams. They both only won 3 out of 12 games in the league this year, which is kind of hard to believe with some of the quality there. You have Marcus Smith and George Ford, kind of the battle of two England out halves as well. Like, it's 5 years now since Quins won that premiership, that kind of smash and grab, high octane, thrilling premiership title, and 3 years since Sale reached the final and almost beat Saracen. So it's been a while since they've kind of been at the top table. Whoever wins this would play Leinster in the Aviva if Leinster get over Edinburgh as well. So there's kind of that bit of an intrigue too. Like, anything to say about either of these?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, Sale without the Curry brothers are nothing as good as they are with them. They'll have been disappointed to have had Bath on the ropes at home last week and not got over the line, albeit in kind of tricky conditions. Quins were in a real funk earlier in the season and shipped a lot of points, both home and away. They have come out the other side of it. They had a very good win against Bristol at the weekend. Like, Bristol properly dusted them up earlier in the year.
Yeah, some of the Quins performances earlier in the season were dire.
Yeah, like that one in particular, like it was, you know, one of these fixtures where they take them to, not to the Stoop, to Twickenham, and, you know, the big game or whatever they call it. But this one was Bristol taking them to the Millennium Stadium, and the Quins played really well. Like, they're a side that, you know, 15, 20 minutes into a game, they're kind of looking at each other going, oh, we're right in this, let's keep going, you know. But if you get on top of them early, and as they progress deeper into this competition, I think up front is where you can really take them on, and that's what I'd imagine Leinster would do if both teams were to make the quarterfinal.
Just on Quins today, it's funny, just remembering now, like, a week after La Rochelle looked unbelievable against Leinster and let it slip. We thought that was fun. Quins knocked La Rochelle out. Like, I forgot they went there and they looked like the Quins of old. Like, there was kind of a thrilling element to it. When Dombrand is firing as well and energetic and involved, I feel like they come to life a little bit as well. He pops up in strange places. He's good on the ball. It kind of was a bit of a throwback. So they still have it in their locker somewhere, I suppose.
No, and even their style of play, it is more suited to the Champions Cup than it is the Premiership, and they've, you know, largely thrown, like, even from their director of rugby, they've largely thrown the towel in on the Premiership, despite beating Bristol at the weekend. I can see them beating Sale at the weekend at home. I like Quins. It's a tough place to go, and I think they'll progress, but I don't think they'll progress past the quarterfinal.
Are you a George Ford fan? Like, what do you make? Like, what he's a certain kind of out half, and I feel like he's not for everyone. Like, you know, when you're watching him play, like, they have a very interesting array of out halves in England that they can go to, and like Ford has obviously kind of been Borthwick's guy until he was dropped in the latter stages of the Six Nations. Like, what's your kind of assessment of Ford? Yeah,
look, I'm a big fan of him. Excellent tactician. He did, however, let me down a bit in the Six Nations. You know, because I was bullish England.
Yeah, he almost cost you your career. Like, let's be honest.
Lucky I'm back.
Your punditry career was hanging by an absolute thread. You were just so far in the red, you just kept chasing.
At least they brought a bit of respectability to the final round. But yeah, like, even the mistakes he made against Ireland, like, I just would draw a line through them, because that's just not him. Like, missing touch twice. He can very much be got at defensively. It's never been the strongest part of his game. It's just about finding him and exposing him and, you know, getting over the top of him, offloading around the back of him is probably the best way to do it. Probably the best tactical kicker out of hand. You know, he's great array of kicks, his ability to find space in the backfield, get the ball airly, accurate.
Spiral bombs,
yeah. Like, you know, when we're talking about kick tennis, he's the best tennis player in the game. But yeah, I've been disappointed with Sale this year. You know, they're a team that really pride themselves on their home games. They typically don't lose at home. And to only have 3 wins at this in the Premiership at this stage of the season, they look like a team that was low on confidence at the weekend against Bath, and coming up against a Quins side that have refound their mojo. I just think they're going to have enough X factor to get over the line.
Obviously, in the Challenge Cup, we have the other 3 Irish provinces. Exeter, Munster is on Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Sorry, Connacht Sharks actually is at 8 o'clock on Good Friday in Galway. The Sharks have left us some of the big guns at home, so a good opportunity for Connacht to get a win there. If they go through there, they're either away to Montpellier or home to Perpignan. Exeter, Munster in Sandy Park on Saturday at 12:30. If Munster get through that, it's either Benetton away or Cardiff at home, and then Ulster home to Ospreys on Saturday night. If they win that, it's Newcastle or La Rochelle at home. So a big carrot there for Ulster. Just from a Munster perspective, I'd love to get your thoughts on Jack Crowley's performance last weekend. Again, kind of similar to maybe the Leinster guys coming back in. I was fascinated to see, could Crowley continue his Six Nations form? Would he come back a confident guy? And I thought he was really, really good. I don't know what you made of him.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And it can be hard, flying out in the middle of that South African trip to, he would only probably had 2 training sessions to make an impact. Obviously, having Craig Casey there the week before would have helped. But Munster are suffering a bit from those 2 guys being in Irish camp and it just being disjointed. They probably lack a bit of leadership when those 2 guys and Tiger are away in particular. He would have been frustrated at the weekend. When he's playing for Ireland, he's getting that front foot ball from the likes of, Doris van der Fleer. Whereas Munster at the weekend, and especially in that first half, and I know we've mentioned it already, but it's unforgivable to be getting turned over on the first, second phase when you should have a clear structure. You should know exactly who's hitting the breakdown, and really, this is the way Munster play. You're looking to build towards the 3rd, 4th, and 5th phase to then try and create a bit of a mismatch and unlock the defence. They don't have the power game to take on the Bulls and just roll around the corner and beat them that way. So I'd say he was definitely feeling the frustration of that. But no, look, he played really well, and he's himself and Casey are very much the key guys.
Some of those little pullback passes.
The one the pump and late
passes, like as an out half, he must have been loving that.
No, absolutely, and he's brave. He's willing to take the ball right to the line. If it doesn't work out for him and he gets whacked, he just gets up and dusts himself off again. He tackled really well again, and he was getting plenty of big bodies coming down his channel. He looks like a guy full of confidence, and they'll need to be at their very best. Exeter were a poor side over the last season, the season before. They were very much in a rebuild. But they are back to the top table.
They're good. They're good. I'm a real Rob Baxter fan. I've always listened to him speak. I think he's done a great job, because they could easily have just kind of torn everything up and said, "Look, you've been there 15 years. It's time for a new guy." But yeah, as you said, they I know the Faye Boso's still obviously out, but they do look good again.
Yeah, their signings this year have made a big difference. You typically get two important signings, marquee signings. 2 Australian guys have come in. It's Hooper,
Len Ikitau and Tom Hooper.
Len's made a big difference in the centre. At home, it's a tough place to go. People think, Munster into the Challenge Cup, go on and run in that and maybe win it. This is probably going to be their toughest game if they are going to progress through to the final, for example. But Exeter are a quality side, are going to really test them at the weekend.
Yeah, anything else from the Bulls game, Munster perspective, that jumped out to you? I thought Adogbo was very destructive when he came in off the bench. Casey looked sharp. Anything that you liked or didn't like?
Yeah, they shored up the scrum. The line out was disappointing at the weekend. And when you're playing in those kind of conditions, your set piece has to be good, because it's much easier to progress up the field when the pitch is as dry as it is. They'll be disappointed with some of those Bulls tries, just the ease of them. Scoring on first phase, or scoring easily on turnover ball. They're going to have to tighten up that area of their game against Exeter if they're going to have a chance.
Yeah, well, that's at 12:30 on Saturday. That's a good game. Exeter, I've always wanted to go. You must have played in Sandy Park a couple of times.
Yeah, played there. Yeah, had a couple of good days there with Leinster and Bordeaux, and some not so good days there with Bristol. That was a good rivalry.
Because you would have played them when they were in their pomp, Exeter, like under Baxter, when they were really like the double winners probably, and they were a serious team then.
Yeah, like they were so good. Sure, we had to change the rules. Remember
the latching.
They'd go 40, 50, 60 phases and make a yard a carry and eventually get over your line.
That wasn't hard to watch, to be fair. Sam Simmons, I think he scored he has some outrageous try record for Exeter.
Yeah, but I always find the early kickoff, like I think, what is it, like 12:30?
Half 12, yeah.
Half 12 kickoff. I always find that favours the home team. You've a bit of travel in you, you're sleeping in a hotel, and versus the home team that they'll probably get, like Baxter's sharp, like you'll have them in the stadium really early. They'll be ready to rock, hit the ground running. And I've seen that 12:30 kickoff catch the away team out plenty of times, and before you know it, you're kind of 7-10 points down 10 minutes into the game, and that's when it will really feel like a mountain to climb.
Again, I'm really interested to see Crowley go again and see if he can back up that confident performance, hopefully iron out those kicking issues. I know you discussed it with Joe really interestingly a couple of weeks back. Connacht Sharks on Good Friday evening, as I mentioned, Sharks probably down a couple of bodies. But looks like the Lancaster era is now taking flight a bit. 5 wins in a row. They had that big scalp up in Ravenhill, then they backed it up again, beating the Ospreys. Didn't love Sean O'Brien kicking that ball out, I'm going to say. When it comes to the end of the season, a bonus point there could have been very handy. But what have you made of them the last couple of weeks and maybe the progression under Lancaster?
Yeah, I was critical of Connacht earlier in the season, but even at that point, I was impressed with how they were improving, the quality of their skills, how they were resourcing the breakdown. The main area that I was being critical of them was they were going too high into the phase count. They were tiring themselves out. The low point probably came against Leinster in the Aviva, where they just ran themselves into the ground and Leinster picked them off, and that game really got away from them in the end. But they're just playing with a lovely kind of set structure. They run a really nice shape, which has lots of deception in it, lots of options. It really challenges defenses, and they've turned into a team that's really hard to beat. They fill the field well defensively. They get off the line. They compete really well at the breakdown. Like consistently, they're always in poaching, which means that the attacking team often have to pile players in. It's slow ball. They get a bit frustrated. The new stadium's been great. Like, it's definitely energising a bit.
Oh, they look so good on TV. I can't wait to just go. I actually just want to go up there and go to a game as a fan, like, and just sit in the stand. Like, it looks great on TV.
No, it does. The sports grounds are really, or Dexicom's a really tough place to go. Like, I know Munster have them in the URC run in. That's going to be a hell of a game.
Rudd's called it the $1 million derby because whoever potentially what's on the line there in terms of Champions Cup and next season.
Yeah, and it's probably, I think Connacht are at home that game, so it's not, Munster have Ulster at home, and then they have the Lions as well, and then Treviso away. So it'd be interesting to see how that one plays out. But the way Connacht are playing, like, Munster will have to be at their very best to get over the line there, and they arguably have a bit more power than that Munster pack now. Tyg Byrne coming back in will make a big difference.
Jansen's right.
Jansen's quality.
He's having a great season.
Jansen, Boyle, Prendergast, when he's on it, like the Murray brothers are really coming into their own.
Since his cap, he's like, even watching last weekend, Daniel Cassende, the Ospreys wing, big powerful guys, carried the ball into midfield, and Murray just smashed them back. And I just feel like he's gotten an extra jolt of confidence almost from getting that. Because when Farrell picked him there for that bench slot, it was kind of a bit out of the blue. So the confidence you must feel when Farrell kind of just says, it's your time.
Yeah.
And then delivering that big try in the Aviva, he just looked a little more confident. He didn't pick up a yellow card towards the end, but that can happen sometimes.
No, and I think being surrounded by new players, the top players in Ireland for 6-7 weeks has really brought him on. Being surrounded by the best coaches as well, listening to all the meetings with Farrell. But yeah, what a cameo that was. Even the block down, that was a huge play. Took his try really well. It was interesting hearing Farrell talking about him. He was like, above all, he's a brilliant rugby player. He's got really good nous. He knows what to do and knows what to do at the right time. And quite often you'll see that when players come back from Irish camp, they kind of find new confidence and they just see things a bit easier. Like, everything's probably happening faster for them in camp. And then you come out and the URC nearly feels a bit easier.
I'm looking at him through new lens almost. Like when he was picked, I was a little surprised, and then I don't know. Maybe I've just been sleeping on him. I have seen him play a fair few times. He just looks so much more powerful now than I would have thought before that Scotland game. I thought they were going for maybe his line out ability or kind of thought he was maybe a rangier player, but he actually packs a lot of power and maybe I underestimated.
Yeah, and it was hard to make it because obviously he played in the summer tour, but then wasn't involved really in autumn. So you're kind of forming the opinion there that maybe they had a look at him, weren't impressed, and then he's been moved to the pushed to the wayside. But he's very much a live contender now, and looks like a guy who also has the ability to fill out a bit more as well, and get even more powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Lastly, then Ulster Ospreys Saturday 8 p.m. Definitely a winnable game for Ulster. They obviously got their bonus point win over Zebra, which was a tricky game. Like, to be fair, Zebra actually came to play. It was a draw at half time. Obviously, the red card for the gouging was a big turning point, and Ulster kicked on in the second half. And if they win it on Saturday night, as I said, Newcastle or potentially La Rochelle, which would be a great fixture to get up to Belfast. Thoughts on Ulster?
Yeah, they've had a tricky kind of 5 or 6 weeks where
they've fallen off a little bit. This kind of disappointing.
The Scarlets game was one that was really disappointing. They had it won, and then coughed the ball up, and Scarlets went the length, and you're looking at 5 points there, and you've only come away with 2. Performance against Connacht fell way below their kind of average standard from this year. Granted, they had a few injuries, like McCluskey was a big loss, James Hume another big loss, and you're ending up like with a bit less experience in the likes of Ben Carson in the centre,
Stockdale in the centre as well.
Which
I don't know if he'd ever played centre before. I don't remember it anyway. Maybe
he's played there a little bit, but not probably a good few years ago. But yeah, look, they were poor that day. At least they've bounced back. And look, that Zebra away fixture, like the way Zebra play, like they don't really contest the breakdown. They fill the field. They just really frustrate you. They don't engage you defensively. So like you'll always see a few teams trip themselves up over there in Zebra. But this is a game that Ulster really should be winning, and they'll be eyeing up going all the way in this competition.
You mentioned it earlier. It can almost be a cliche thing to say, sure, have a crack at the Challenge Cup. You're in the Challenge Cup now. But Ulster really should have a crack, like with their draw. Like they have Ospreys home, another home game, and the only team they would be away to in a semi-final would be Benetton. Anyone else, they would have that in Belfast. So, and like Benetton away, even though a tough game would be winnable, so they should definitely be targeting a final.
Yeah, like
do you at URC? Do you say,
No, like the gas thing is with the Challenge Cup, everyone will say, have a crack at it. Like everyone wants to win it. You're in it. And winning that competition, you see like a lot of the teams that have won the Challenge Cup in previous years have gone on to be Champions Cup contenders the following year. Like winning is a habit. When Munster were in the Challenge Cup and they lost to Harlequins, they wanted to win that competition. When I was in it with Ulster and we lost to Leicester away, we wanted to win that this year. We were beaten fair and square. It wasn't like, it was only the Challenge Cup. You want to win it.
Did you play when Leinster won at that time?
Yeah.
And like,
we
really put it, you really should have been in the Champions Cup, obviously, like, but
we should have.
Cup medal, actually. Yeah. Is it like pride of place or?
No, it's not pride of place, but well, no, sorry, it is. It's pride of place for me because we got knocked out of the Champions Cup that year, dropped into the Challenge, and it was a unique season that year because we ended up having 5 home games in a row, which you never usually get. It was just the way the league worked. And the draw that we got in the Challenge Cup, when you drop down from the Champions Cup back then, you actually got the home fixtures, whereas now when that happens, you get the away fixtures.
Do you not play away to Wasps in the quarterfinals? I think I was at that game.
Yeah, we played away to Wasps. Yeah.
Oh, and I remember I remember that game. I remember I was there with my dad, and we were like, "Geez, Madigan's put on a good show tonight." Like, I actually remember being like, "Sorry, yeah, he's really pulling the strings here," because it was a real strong Leinster team. I remember Christian Wade scored an unbelievable try. I haven't thought about that game when it was.
Yeah,
sorry,
it was in their old stadium, and then off the back of beating them, we then got the home final. I think we played Biarritz and Stad along the way. But yeah, I have such fond memories of that, because I was starting in them versus some of the Champions Cup wins.
They gave Johnny the week off.
Well, a bit of that, all right. But some of the Champions Cup wins that I have, look, I was in the 23, but you haven't contributed to it as much as let's say some of the URC medals that I have that I certainly look back on very fondly. I know when Bristol won the Challenge Cup, I didn't play in the final games. I'd moved to Ulster at that stage, but we were I played the Challenge Cup games earlier in the season. That was the year of COVID, but it was a real stepping stone for Bristol, because they'd gone from playing in the Championship to then into the Premiership, competing in the Challenge Cup, and then they went on and won that, and they now view themselves as a genuine Champions Cup side, and they are. Sure, they've made the last 16 again, and will be competing at the top end of the Premiership. So it doesn't get the coverage because the Champions Cup is where it's at. But everyone that's in that knows that this is an important stepping stone for them.
Yeah, but with 3 Irish teams in it, we'll be getting more coverage on this show this year anyway.
Yeah,
and let's see how they take how they go this weekend. So that's that on our comprehensive European. If there's a more comprehensive European rugby preview anywhere in the world this week, I would be surprised. I think we mentioned every single team. I threw a lot at you there, to be fair, Ian. So I appreciate you coming to play today. That's it for this episode of the Indo Sport podcast, sponsored by Energia. Joe, even though he is off, did record we squeezed the last bit of juice out of him before he went home yesterday, a Masters preview at Brandel Chambly, which will be in your feed tomorrow morning, which I sat in on yesterday, and it is a very, very good chat. So that's going to be your Good Friday offering tomorrow. We will be back then next week, hopefully back to regularly scheduled programming, everyone fit and firing, ready to go. But for now, Ian, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks a million for having me in.